In this video, we'll take a look at how we can go about editing the scene setup for Fusion 360. If we come up to the toolbar here, we can click on the Scene Settings button, and this will bring up a new dialog window on the right-hand side of the screen. From here, we can choose a number of settings, such as the brightness of the background, its position, the background, whether or not it's solid color. In this case, I can change the color to something else, and hit OK, and you'll see that will change the background. If I check this drop-down and select Environment, it'll actually display the environment HDRI image that's lighting this. So we're going to leave it on Environment for now, just so we can get a better idea of the changes. We have an option for a ground plane, whether or not we want that ground plane to stretch off into infinity, and whether or not the ground plane actually has reflections. We can also change the roughness of the ground plane. This effectively means how sharp or blurry is that reflection going to be. So the higher the roughness, the blurrier the reflection. For camera controls, we have an option between orthographic view, perspective, or perspective with ortho faces. For the most part, when you're going for renders, it's better to do it in perspective mode as it's going to look more realistic. The focal length is effectively the width of the camera length. The lower it is, the more of a fisheye effect we're going to get. The higher the focal length, the closer to orthographic view we're going to get. Exposure is effectively the overall brightness of your scene. The higher levels of exposure, the darker the scene is going to be. The lower the level of exposure, the more bright the scene is going to be. Usually a value of around 9.5 is pretty good. Depth of field. Depth of field is an option that blurs out the background of anything that isn't in focus. We can turn it on here. We will get a warning saying the depth of field effect will only be visible when ray tracing is enabled. This effectively means it'll only appear in the final render. It won't show in the viewport. We'll just hit OK on that. From here, we can choose the center of focus, this being what part of the object do we want to focus on, and the blur is the strength of the blur effect. Again, we can't see it here, but we will be able to see it when we do our final render. The other option we have here is under Environment Library. This is where we can change our environment setup to give us different lighting effects. So by default, Fusion 360 comes with a number of different studio lighting scenes, but we have some other options here that we can download. Alternatively, we can attach a custom environment if you have one available on your computer. If I select this field environment and double click on it, that should convert this scene here to put me out in an open field. If we want to move the background, the environment, or its brightness, this is where we'll have to come back to settings and choose this position option. Here we can change things like the rotation of the environment or even the ground scale. So how zoomed in or zoomed out is this environment. We can also choose with the grippers the position of this environment. So again, move it up, down, left, and right.